Kryptonians, long time no see. It is great to see you today. Very late review of Morbius, which came out like 2.5 weeks ago and pretty much passed everybody by, but I still want to talk about it. Morbius is another comic book movie. This one is directed by Daniel Espinosa. It's the third film in the Venomverse, Sonyverse, or whatever they want to call it. I don't know if they have an official designation for it, but whatever, it's the universe where the Venom movies have existed. The movie stars Jared Leto as the protagonist of the movie, Dr. Michael Morbius. It stars Adria Arjona, Michael Keaton, very briefly, Tyrese Gibson getting a paycheck in this movie, Jared Harris, Matt Smith is also in this movie. It's an origin story for Dr. Michael Morbius. It tells you how he became the living vampire. This is a villain or an anti-hero that has specifically had a history with Spider-Man and Blade, among other people in the comics. It tells you how he got his abilities, and it tells you like how he deals with getting his abilities. Meanwhile, someone that he has a personal connection to gets access to these same abilities, and so we have a comic book movie. We have a comic book movie that a lot of people, I'm not gonna lie, it felt like they were determined to hate this thing before it came out, which, I don't know, maybe based on how your experience was with the movie, maybe you were justified in hating it before it came out. I didn't expect a masterpiece or anything like that, but I was hoping to at least have a good time, like I've occasionally had with the other Venom movies. What I can say about this movie is that it's not great, it's not even really good, it doesn't reinvent the wheel, and certainly there are plenty of problems and flaws that you can look for in a movie like this. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't somewhat enjoy myself. I don't think the movie was bad. I don't think it was the crime against humanity that society, and, you know, mostly Twitter was telling me it was gonna be beforehand. I will praise Jared Leto as Dr. Michael Morbius. I do think that he gave a solid performance in this one. Definitely not his best work, but I would say that he was one of the few performances in this movie that felt committed, like, and definitely in terms of character work, as you would expect, he gets plenty of work here, although they probably could have done a little bit better on that too. Most of the other performances are at the very least workmanlike. Adria Arjona is given hardly anything to do, but she's fine to look at in the movie, and she's also fine in terms of performances. Matt Smith is really the one that kind of stole the show in a lot of scenes for me in this movie, and it was really just because of how much fun he was having with a role like this. He's the one character in the movie that kind of went into campy, over-the-top mode, and that kind of matched the tone of the previous Venom movies. It's actually kind of weird because the majority of this movie, the tone does not really fit those Venom movies. The tone is actually pretty serious and maybe a little bit like darker for a movie like this. I thought most of the movie took itself pretty seriously, and that was a refreshing change of pace compared to the Venom movies, which are much more campy and much more like the early to mid 2000s type of comic book movies. There are elements of this movie that are certainly early to mid 2000s, but I thought the tone was actually pretty serious. When it comes to the visual aspect of the movie, I did like how some of Morbius's powers were depicted in this movie. Like visually, there are certain scenes that pop in front of your eyes, and I like the way that they were able to make them look on screen and translate them from the comics. That's not to say that it's a visually beautiful movie or anything like that. It's just that some of the visuals, especially within the action scenes and how they depict the powers, I thought some of that shit looked cool. I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of things that I actually liked and enjoyed about the movie, but I'm just here to tell you that I did like and enjoy certain things about the movie. When it comes to the negatives of this movie, obviously this is my chance to like dump all over it or whatever, and this is the part of the video that you're really gonna get excited for. This is one of those movies that feels like it actually could have benefited from having like an extra 20 to 30 minutes or something like that. A lot of the stuff in this script feels very undercooked and very underdeveloped. You don't get as much time and as much development with a lot of these characters, their backstories, or their relationships with each other as you wanted to get in a movie like this. Then when the movie tries to land for certain emotional moments and they're trying to build off of certain relationships, you just don't feel it in the script. The romance between Michael Morbius' character and Adria Arjona's character in this movie is a waste of time. It's a waste of oxygen. It feels like they barely put any thought into it. It's just kind of like, oh, well, she's kind of a love interest and there you go. And that's kind of the bare minimum effort that the script takes with this movie. I was actually particularly let down by the relationship between the hero and the villain, because at first I thought it was pretty cool that they were developing a real personal connection between the two. There comes a point in the movie where the villain becomes the villain, where that personal thing is just kind of thrown out the window, and the villain is basically just a villain for the sake of being a villain. Like, it just feels like their motivations don't make that much sense anymore, and it's kind of like the movie's like, well, We just need somebody to be evil in this movie, and since we're not gonna go with Michael Morbius being evil, even though he's been a villain in the comics, we're just gonna make this guy evil, and we're just gonna have him fight Morbius for some reason. A lot of people are gonna chew this movie out about the CGI, the visual effects, and you know what? Yeah, I got nothing. I can't really defend that. This is some really bad stuff. I'm not talking early to mid 2000s in terms of CGI. I'm talking like 90s. 80s, Atari, Sega, go beyond PlayStation 1. Some of the visual effects in this movie are atrocious. This feels very lazy. Speaking of lazy, there's a post-credit scene. Feels very tacked on. Rushed and not really well thought out, and that describes the script, that describes that post-credit scene, the CGI. Having said that, I didn't hate Morbius. I thought it was a fine enough movie. I'm going to leave this one in the Fortress of Solitude. Stay tuned, I have a shit ton of videos to get out. A lot of them are gonna feel like they're late and old, but give me a break here. I wanna get back into the swing of things. Oh, Morbius, you did not see Morbius, so I'm not gonna ask you about Morbius. Are you excited about the possibility of a Sinister Six movie? And if so, which Spider-Man would you want to be involved in a Sinister Six movie? Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, or Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man? Let me know in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. And if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.